just get us going. All right, so then for the intentions today, we're going to review the draft 1 framework feedback that we got, and then we're going to just make some revisions to a draft 2. Draft 2 is going to be kind of like the outward facing, what are we sending out to share? So we're going to take whatever the revisions are from the draft 1 and then make them into draft 2, the revisions, put that into the draft 2. So I'm going to move us down into, let's see, so cross-pollination. So we kind of skipped through this part earlier around cross-pollination, and we kind of moved into where we were needing to review, but I just wanted to give you a little background of some things that have been happening this week. So we did meet with the engagement work group, and they are currently working on a survey. And so the survey is, there's one for adults, and then there's one that's geared for students. The ones for adults really breaks down what are they seeing, what are they noticing in the standards and the framework. I'm going to share this with you too, so you can see what it's looking like. Let me see where I can share. Do I want to send it? Yeah, let me grab this link real quick. If you're able to open it, here's the survey that kind of just a draft of what it looks like. So the engagement group said, okay, we really want to hear what regions are responding. So there's a question on what region. There's a question on what group do the person responding, this is for the adult one, are they representing? So they can check all that they apply. I don't think that this is fully fleshed out. So if you have any feedback, there was some intent making sure that some of these language in the section around who do they represent aligned with the bill language. I want to make sure that that was covered in here. And then down below, it starts to get into breaking apart, okay, feedback on the framework. How satisfied are you with the proposed framework? What should be strengthened or modified? What do you think is missing? And then feedback on the standards, similar questions is how satisfied are you? Then that you could see that scale, the rating scale, and then what should be strengthened or modified for the standards? What do you think is missing? And then some of the final questions are any other suggestions that people may have. And I think that's it, actually. That was the last one. So this is for the adults. The student one, they were feeling like the student facing, it would be really difficult to ask the same questions for students and unpack. So they're trying to break it down into a little bit. I don't have an example of what those questions are quite yet. They're still working on fleshing that out. I should have that for you next week, though. We can share what those questions are. So that's kind of how this one's shaping. We also met with the standards work group earlier today, and I can share with you a couple. So we didn't get really far, but we had some really good conversations. So I'm going to share with you in the chat a couple of the things that we were able to land on. So in the chat is there. So this is just the standards section. We separated the standards and the framework out. And so on here, we were able to cover the first few things. So the first was there was an interest in flipping the transformative socio-emotional learning focal constructs to be first column, and then Castle's competencies to be second. So that was a lot of discussion around that and really kind of differing views, but we landed on that. That made sense for kind of creating kind of like a larger vision around the work that then, and I think, Andrea, this might go to like your comment, addressing your comment of what you were asking for. It's like kind of like that bigger thinking, and then how do the competencies align to that larger thinking. We were able to address a couple of Subin's questions, organizational conditions that is in some of the work that we're doing with the framework. So there was questions around, can there be a set of standards? There's a really interest from the standards group to say like, hey, what would those organizational conditions look like? And could there be a set of standards that are recommended or for that? And so that was a recommendation that they have. And then the last one that we got to was around the adult competencies and constructs, which then kind of led into a few of these other parts around grade banding and grade levels. And we landed on that there is an interest in staying away from grade banding and grade level competencies, but rather having growth progressions. So what does it look like to grow? What does it look like those competencies, knowledge, skills to grow over time with practice and modeling, but not necessarily saying like this is going to happen at this grade level or these grade levels. Does that make sense? So that is kind of where we left off with this, like trying to integrate. And so there's another document that actually starts to integrate those parts that we talked about. And I will just quickly share what that looks like, just so you can kind of see that we're just pulling it in. And this is kind of what we're hoping to get to today, is just a really clean document where we pulled in some of those edits and made those changes. So the document in the chat now, as you can see, that we've added those in, starting to get a little more firm on a few areas, like down here, that growth progression. And also something added for the standards group is differentiating the how and the who, and starting to get at who is teaching the socio-emotional learning standards. And so that will need to be fleshed out a little bit more around who.
Everyone?
Yeah, that was what
I mean, that's my thought. Like, I just had this conversation last night in my daughter's site council, and I fear if we, I don't know, I have a fear around this: who will teach the standards, and it's someone's responsibility, someone else's, versus all of these things are a part of quality instruction. So I'm curious about that.
Yeah, the discussion from the standards group was that it was everybody's job, and how do we create the system conditions, and how do we talk about the practices and how that's done throughout the whole school, rather than just in the classroom, as either counselors come in, or versus like it's the teacher versus like someone else. So talking about like how can this look, and being able to kind of like flesh that out a bit more would be the next step.
Or that it's like only happens in an advisory period. Because then, I don't know, that's like just my biggest fear around all this work, is that we don't get to the place where we get away from. And we did our 10-minute SEL lesson on the third Friday of the month.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I would say that the standards group is very much in thinking, Andrea, of like what we're in alignment across the two work groups. Becca, were you going to add something?
I was just going to say that I know in the framework group, one of the things that we were talking about was, we completely agree, but they were just discussing the difficulty that they're afraid that it wasn't so much the difficulty, but that there's a lot of fear that there could be, excuse me, lots of resistance and difficulty, or, resistance that, around people wanting to accept that this belongs to all of us, and, how to really communicate that this is not necessarily just an advisory lesson type thing or some sort of add-on, but that there's just a fear that there's going to be resistance towards that. So in thinking about that resistance, then let's think about how to, problem solve that and overcome that. And in the framework group, that was just, we were just wanting to admit the reality of the fear being there. I think that was part of the bigger thing. And there's one other thing, is like, I know one other point that I brought up while we were talking about that, excuse me, was something, similar, like in the middle school setting here, one of the principals and some of the other administrators wanted to really get away from, in the middle school, doing like tracking in terms of like, advanced tracking and honors tracking at the middle school, like, oh, these are your advanced English kids, these are your general English kids. And like, we got to get away from that. Kids need to be being taught at different levels within, even within the same classroom, just like, and that they were talking about that, like elementary school teachers seem to, they seem to kind of get that. They're like, they have to do that all the time. You don't have kids going from class to class. You only have one teacher, and that you have to differentiate within the class. But that for some reason at the middle school and high school levels, of course, that feels so much harder to folks for some reason. And, it's a sort of mysterious why it feels harder. But then the one principal, I just remember a very distinct comment he made about how he was like, it's so hard to get everyone to understand that, differentiating within your classroom, giving students who maybe have more, who might be and talented and gifted, or who may have, more, different learning needs of any kind, that doesn't mean giving them more work. It means changing up their work, shifting the level of work that they're given, as opposed to here's another packet you can do. And he said his teachers at the middle school level were they were struggling with that so much, understanding that didn't mean they were giving the kids, extra work.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so I felt like it was sort of kind of similar, like, yeah.
Yeah, it feels like we have an opportunity to address that, like the who and the how, maybe in both, like the framework and the standard sections. Mm-hmm. So like the standards are thinking that group is like really thinking to kind of like name around like who, but I feel like the framework, like if with this work group, if they can kind of set the stage, the larger stage of how that's nestled within like the larger system, like that would be perfect to kind of like make that through line across the framework and standards. So yeah, this is definitely comes up in a lot of different conversations around who's implementing. Okay, so in the chat, I just put in the, so for the framework, the recommendations and the feedback. So just to differentiate for us, for draft one, Vanessa's highlighted up at the top as yellow. So this is where there's feedback. And then the other version, draft two, I'm going to share, sorry, all these documents. I'm going to share the draft two. So right now I'm only going to have draft one, draft two open. And what we're going to do is look at draft one and just to spend a couple minutes, I'm going to just be quiet and let you both read some of the feedback that's come in for the framework recommendations. You can see people have made comments off to the side.
Is it in that area that it says it's under the questions category? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, over there. And so what we'll want to do is try to clean up this whole column and the additional comments that are off to the side. So then when we go to draft two, you can see that it's like the question column has been removed. It's just straight framework and then kind of those principal components. So I'm just going to take a moment. Oh,
yeah, I'm just going to turn my camera off while I read.
Perfect. Yep. I will do the same. Let's come back and maybe, do you want to do like, let's do 4 minutes. Does that give us enough time to read through? 4, 5? Just do 5, even 5?
That sounds good. Yeah.
Okay, even 5. We'll see you right at 4.
Thanks.
All right. Do you feel like you need a little more time, or was that enough to just kind of look through feedback? Enough time.
I think I'm good. I was just finishing up, but I think I'm good.
Okay. So to move items, is there any way one of you might be able to help me? What we were thinking and what we did with the standards group that worked well is for any comment that was on here, we had a discussion of how to integrate it in. And if it was something we could move in, we just said that it was integrated or like moved over. If it wasn't, then we kind of named why we were kind of leaving it, or maybe if it belonged, like for instance, if something belongs in the standards area, then we, when I was working with standards earlier, they said, oh, this kind of sounds like framework discussion. So is there someone that can help kind of capture those comments?
Yeah, I can help with that.
Thank you.
Be harder on a phone.
What's that?
I said it might be harder for Rebecca on a phone.
Yes, thank you. And I'm actually moving to a different space, but yeah, if you could start, that'd be awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. And I've got like 3 screens, so.
Beautiful. That's
Perfect.
way better than what I've got right this second. Perfect.
Okay. So should we just run straight down? That's kind of what we did earlier, which made sense.
Yeah.
Was like, okay, what's the first thing up there? And I'm seeing Grace says that she's saying SEL is one pillar within the integrated model for mental health. So what she is asking, what she's saying here is that she wants to see the connection to the integrated model for mental health when we frame this.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about that. I read a really interesting article. They actually sent it to Vanessa. I should send it to you as well. And it was an Ed Week, and it was about how can districts how can we get ahead of parent objection, sort of misplaced parent objection around social emotional learning. And one of the things they really named in the article that resonated for me was when you really talk to families about what we're doing with SEL, things like setting goals, building healthy relationships, problem solving, collaboration, like the life skills, the essential life skills that those are. I agree with Grace that SEL is a part of the integrated model of mental health. I worry if we say in the framework, like an opening framework statement, the framework is grounded in the understanding that SEL and learning in general is relational and a pillar of the integrated model of mental health, we will miss out on the aspects of social emotional learning that also impact academic achievement. So I worry that that comment or including that in the framework is limiting. And then do we have the problem of trying to make it expansive and leaving out a bunch of stuff? So
yeah. So maybe the right place for it and to maybe link to it, but maybe not right here in like the intro, possibly. Do you think maybe like later on?
Yeah, I'm gonna make that in a comment. Concept.
Rebecca, do you have any feelings around that of like calling out the connection to social emotional learning to the integrated model for mental health right at the very first sentence, or doing that embedded within later?
Yeah, hold on a sec. Let me get to my better space and I'll look at it again real quick. Hang on.
She did mention it, I think, further down in another spot. Let me just check. Maybe she didn't. I thought there was. She did also make a similar comment in the standards one, and we didn't get to her comment quite yet. So that will be the next time we meet.
Give me just 2 seconds. I'm almost there.
Yeah, and then it also kind of calls to mind just that this opening statement, the SEL framework is grounded in the understanding that SEL and learning in general is relational. I almost want to say something there, like, I'm just going to type it.
Yeah, type it in.
SEL framework is grounded in the understanding that, like, learning complex. I don't know quite how to say this. It's relational, complex, and multifaceted. this is just for, not that I would all, I don't. So just sort of saying the SEL framework is grounded in the understanding that SEL and learning and achievement in general is relational, complex, and multifaceted. The framework calls for the integration of our social emotional selves with the academic tasks of school.
Struggling with the academic tasks.
Me too. I'm actually struggling with that whole sentence.
Yeah. Our socio-emotional learning selves.
It's like the framework calls for the integration of the how we learn with the what we learn.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe, is that sentence necessary? The framework calls for the integration. It could be like, framework calls out the integration of these. I'm gonna look at the standards document really quick. Ooh. The focal constructs, competencies, stated wow. Oh, hold on, my typing is off today. I'm making a comment with the content.
Andrea, what do you think if I move the like the edits over into the other document so that it's more
Okay.
like, putting it in?
So I made that comment. The framework calls out the integration of the focal constructs and competencies associated with how we learn and grow with the content standards of school. Academic content standards. I don't, task isn't my favorite.
Are you on draft 1 right now or draft 2?
Draft 1.
Okay.
Both. We're in both.
Yeah.
She's been Andrea's been typing in draft
I
1.
typed in 1.
Into 1. Okay, great.
Yeah, and I'm gonna start to move over the changes into the new one. There's a weird thing right there in the first sentence, the understanding that socio-emotional learning and achievement.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know if we want to, I don't know if we need to add the word achievement. I was just kind of nodding.
Oh no, it's not your achievement. It's that we have socio-emotional learning
And learning and.
Oh,
yeah.
And then another and.
So it could be just SEL comma learning comma and achievement. Awkward comma that.
Is it socio-emotional learning and achievement?
Yeah, I don't know if social, well.
Social emotional SEL.
Because it did say social emotional learning, SEL, and learning in general is relational. So it is duplicative.
2 different kinds of learning there. Yeah.
Yeah. Growth.
I thought that was a better way to say it. SEL.
So the understanding that SEL.
And learning in general.
And I could say
It's taking out SEL there and sort of combining the 2 sentences. The SEL framework is grounded in understanding.
Yeah, just remove that, I think. Yeah.
That
learning and achievement.
There you go.
In general.
Yeah, like that.
We already said SEL. Yeah, that makes sense.
And then rather than the social emotional selves and academic tasks. I mean, I don't want it to be academic and jargony. What if it was this?
integration, social emotional competencies with academics.
I was trying to remember what the bill says. I think it said content. No, what did it say?
I have it right here because I actually was just in a meeting this morning with my administrators about some other stuff. And I was like, and by the way, let's take a look at this. Anyway,
Great.
I had to, it was a whole nother.
Good. Becca, if you can find that language of what it says, I think it's in the whereas statement.
Yes, I've got.
Okay, here's the whereas statement.
Just a sec, I'll pull it up. All right, let's see. Excuse me. The framework calls for the integration of social emotional competencies with academics. Okay.
Andrea, I'm just looking at your comment too, like associated with how we learn and grow within the content standards of, I'm wondering if it's like within the content standards of school. So then it's like happening within those content areas, like that names and just kind of like layman's terms, like social emotional learning happens in within there, not separate from.
Yeah.
Calls for the integration of socio-emotional.
Okay. Do you, let's see. I'm in section 4 of the bill.
Okay.
And I think it says, let's see, where's that? The standards and framework proposed by the advisory group must, colon. So is that the area you're talking about? The standards and framework group proposed by the advisory group must, and then there's, you know, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, you know, is that where you're talking about?
It's very specific. It says that the this about socio-emotional learning being integrated into content areas. There should be a line.
Just looking for a link.
Education. Seeing that, but I mean, it starts off by being developmentally appropriate, aligning with other models and practices of the department related to mental health, including, you know, racial equity, trauma-informed practices within strengths-based multi-tiered systems, increasing public school students' social emotional development. And then it lists, you know, promote, I don't know if this is, I feel like this is the same section you're talking about, but I'm not seeing anything else specific there, but increase, promote self-awareness, awareness of others, etc.
Do you have a quick hyperlink to it?
Yeah, let me pull that up real quick.
Thank
here.
you. Just look at it real fast. Sorry.
Yeah, the one I'm seeing that is most relevant, like if I just did a control find within the enrolled text. Whereas social emotional learning should be incorporated into all academic content standards as part of an integrated model of mental health, mental and emotional health. It's on page 2.
Yep, that's it.
I think I top. That's the problem, I think. Yeah.
Here, I'll paste it in.
Got it. Okay.
Thank you. So right here with academic content, I like your language that you use though, like with how we learn and grow. Just feels more, but
it feels like more plain language.
Yeah.
How we learn and
grow. Do we want to add right here the rest of it? It's like an integrated Model of mental health, mental and emotional health. Do you want to keep it out? Here, if I put it in.
Humans?
Oh, you put it in.
No, I don't know. I don't want to put integrated model of mental health into the opening. And my strong feelings about that are that it feels like jargon. I think those of us in the field who've come to know and understand it kind of rolls off the tongue. But I think if we're talking about school board members, maybe even our educators, our community members who haven't been doing this work, what does that really mean? So in our lives. You could do like additionally SEL, this framework.
I do like the part about, I mean, it's a little jargony, but about the, incorporating it into all academic content standards. I mean, and how can we say that in a way that's, a little bit less incorporated into all academic content standards.
And grow. You can separate it.
I mean, the framework calls for the integration of social and emotional learning. I mean, do we just say it as simply as into all areas of academics or into all areas of, and just break it down even a little more simply somehow?
Yeah, within all areas of academics.
Start with that at least, maybe.
How we learn and grow academically and in our lives.
Yeah, sounds good. It just feels like really easy to, like a really easy interpretation of the bill language.
I think it works.
Okay.
Do we leave this? Additionally, this framework has the explicit goal to promote anti-racism and educational equity.
So I think that's like naming the intent. Yeah.
Okay.
Andrew, are you saying you're concerned about that? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not concerned about it being the goal.
Of course, we know that it's not a concern. Yeah, right. Yeah.
I think it opens it up to some critical feedback that we may or may not want at this time. So that's something to consider.
Even though we know that's the end goal, that's what we're creating, that putting that right out there, it is opening us right up for some stuff probably.
Yeah.
But
I mean, just as that, I mean, I get emails. I mean, Beth, you might get these too. For just random citizens. I think that I, for some reason, control everything taught in the state. And we got a voicemail in like the middle of the night this week from someone who's not even from the state, going off about how Oregon students can't read and write, and it's because we're teaching them all about sex. So my hope is that we can help. I want people to embrace social emotional learning. I think that collaborative problem solving, relationship skills, social awareness, learning about yourself, learning about how you move within the world are all really important things that do lead to more equitable outcomes for students. I'm okay leaving it. I just think it's about being prepared with how we talk to folks who will disagree with that statement.
Yeah. I think it's good to name it. I think we want to be explicit too. I mean, it says that we're explicit, but I mean, yeah, it's up to you all. Do you want to move to the next item on here and just let it sit for a little bit. And this can just be kind of our sandbox. So let me go back to the other document. Over in the questions, should we just run through the question column? So one of the first questions is, can equity be a lens that we use to look at all the guiding principles, equity of family school partnerships, equity of practices, equity of implementation, not as a standalone? And that's come up multiple times, even in our discussion, was that these theme or equity kind of runs throughout, transformative runs throughout, partnership runs throughout. So is there a way to either pull it out or to like name it within this section to say that equity runs through, or do we want to have it up as like up above paragraph?
I think it's fine to, I agree. And I think, I think it needs to stand out as its own guiding principle as well. But I think saying something in the principal components of equity as a guiding principle, we believe equity is a part of all the guiding principles, and there are specific and discrete components of it as well.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if that can be after this sentence, then additionally, this framework has an explicit goal to promote anti-racism educational equity. It feels like a good connection to then where it's then embedded within the guiding principles.
Are you talking about down in the guiding principle section right now? Is that where we're at? Where you talking about?
Andrea, what were you thinking? Were you thinking put it down below or call it out?
Putting it in the box here, like something like this. Like
I'm going to copy and paste something just real quick for you guys, and
okay.
we can reject it or accept it. I'm going to put it up here and see. This is this is from the transformative SEL page. I don't know if there's any language in this that would be anything we would want to use.
I mean, I like saying something about like, I like the SEL as a process where young people and adults build strong, respectful, and lasting relationships that facilitate co-learning, period. I like that, this part.
So like period.
Yeah. That could be a way to say that. I don't know if it captures what the question is here. Around equity as something that loops through all of the guiding principles. So it could be something. Framework. Like that.
Perfect. Yeah, naming it.
Okay.
Principles of the framework. Yeah, sure. And then shall I get rid of that second part there, to critically examine, et cetera, and so forth?
Yeah, I mean, I'm
stop after co-learning. Is that what you think? Is that what you're saying?
well, I like it as a sentence. I'm wondering,
Yeah.
Does it replace what we wrote above there? That the framework calls for the integration of social and emotional learning with how they learn and grow academically and in our lives. Does it replace it? Is it saying the same thing in a different way?
Could it possibly even go down under why transformative SEL, and then it's kind of like what it is. So like right here, it could be like, let me just move it down.
Yeah, then I would just take this out.
Okay. Let's see. So some of the other comments that were kind of connected to this one was the next one under the questions column. Equity needs to move beyond access, opportunities, and outcomes. Needs to move beyond access, opportunities, and outcomes to embodiment.
Mm-hmm.
How does this show up in practice and action? It looked like someone had a similar question.
And it's similar to Daniel Gallo's comment about equity as a sense of belonging.
Mm-hmm. It's a lived experience that's felt. So it moves beyond equity to inclusion.
Mm-hmm.
So I almost see like another bullet.
Let me find, I'm going to find some.
So if we go to the, oh, there you go. Okay, I was going to say, let's go into version 2, draft 2. Sense of belonging, yes.
I have something I'll put up here too. Hang on.
Becca, do you have both versions open, the draft 1 and draft 2?
I do. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Just wanted to make sure when you transferred over, you have both of them.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. He also mentions around how does equity simultaneously include strengths-based trauma-informed principles, honoring ways of being and knowing, creating inclusive spaces, prioritizing care and connection. That language directly connects it to our integrative model for mental health without naming the integrative model for mental health within the section. So it might be a way to kind of weave in, like integrate those pieces in here.
Mm-hmm.
I think adding
I thought that was later
here in the affirmation area. Strength space. I mean, like, there's part of that too, of that comment, how does equity simultaneously include strengths-based? And then the following one below it, is this a section where we can name the practices and approaches? That feels like it starts to get into implementation and guidance, and gets us out of framework.
So putting it down at the bottom. Yeah, because we name it up above. Utilize this.
I would say not including it at all. Like for me, like I don't know that in the framework we need to. I mean, I appreciate all the comments that everyone made, but I'm also thinking, okay, do we, as a frame? I think our job as a framework group is then to say, okay, we got all these comments. Do we include all of them in some way in the framework? Right. For me, those 2 comments would be places that we sort of hold and put off into like whatever holding place we have for things that we think should go in the guidance, and name that putting them here doesn't feel like putting them in the framework doesn't feel like the appropriate place to call them out. Mm-hmm. Putting them in the guidance.
We do have the honoring lifelong learning pillar principle, which does have the implementation of SEL. Do you think maybe in that lower section?
Yeah, a strengths-based, like saying a strengths-based trauma-informed approach.
Yeah, we do have that up in equity up here, but we could move that down if you think it'd be better in implementation.
Where did you say the pillar for lifelong learning is? So where did you say that is listed?
It's the last.
It's the last pillar
row in the table.
Yeah.
Oh, I got it. I see it now.
Sorry, it won't let me highlight.
Okay.
So should I just take this down, put it down in implementation?
I'd prefer to see it down in implementation.
I think that makes sense. And then I think, I think something along the lines of connectedness and belonging does address that also. And I'm not sure if that needs to go in equity. I think if we were to boil down some of the comments, that's what they're getting at. Like if we were to just take some of those comments, I agree that Andrea, I think there's a lot there, but I think if we were to like boil down what they're asking or saying, we're talking about inclusive spaces and we're talking about care, connection, and belonging. So we could boil that down and maybe just name a couple of those. Maybe that goes in, I don't know if that goes in equity or let's see. Yeah. Maybe.
Well, I like, I mean, from my perspective, I added that bullet point that an equity guiding principle means that SEL leads to a sense of belonging, inclusion, and embodying your stuff or potential, whatever. I like that the principle says equity, and access, opportunities, and outcomes. One of those outcomes is a sense of belonging and a sense of inclusion.
Yes. Did you say it's already in there?
I typed it in. Yeah.
Under. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, yep. I see it. Got it. I like that.
That's great.
I think that kind of pulls apart some of those questions. I mean, there's obviously a lot more to them, but like, I think that kind of is what you could boil them down. One of the things you could boil them down to.
It looks like another part of his comment is he's asking up in that equity section, like, is this a section where we can name some of the practices and approaches? He's asking, or is this the work of the standards group? So I think down in implementation, it can be, I mean, we are saying strengths-based and trauma-informed approaches.
I think that's enough, personally.
Okay.
I think the how, I don't think we want to get too far down the how trail here. My personal opinion.
Something that's mentioned here that Vanessa had brought up before is that we're missing restorative practices. Do you feel like that is captured somewhere in using?
That's a good point. I did see, what did I see about?
I guess that here's a concern I have. If we start naming everything
in
education, like it just becomes this long, expansive list of what feels like a bunch of initiatives that we're trying to sort of weave together. Like the purpose, like, you know, if we start thinking about what the purpose of trauma-informed education, the purpose of restorative practices, the purpose of SEL, you know, we get to agency, voice, choice, mutuality, collaboration. All of those things are part of restorative, you know, whatever name we put on it. But I fear that if we just start doing a laundry list, it will feel like that's what we did. We made a laundry list of buzzwords.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just going to make a note. And so I said capture, so that this feedback from Daniel was captured in various areas of draft 2. And I'm going to put that we're holding on holding off on listing everything.
Yeah, not that it's not important, but that we sort of are naming that by not giving just like a list. I think that's probably true too. They are being addressed, I think, in other ways.
I have 2 more thoughts on this section. So,
okay, the last little part. Sorry, Andrea, what were you saying?
So I just had 2 more thoughts. So like right here, a firm's identity and individual's background, including community background, heritage, language, culture. I'd like to add and ability.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Let's put it in.
Right.
And then I really struggle with this word differentiality.
Yeah, I don't even know where that came from.
I know. I think we were talking about differentiation and we just sort of lost it.
Oh.
But we have inclusion here now. And if we add ability.
Yeah, I think that's, and maybe that's what was trying to be said, but it just, yeah.
Here's strengths-based again too.
Yeah. Do we need those sub bullets? I would say no.
Individual background, including community background, and ability, racial.
Can we add intersectionality at the end? Ability and intersectionality. And then we could take off the others.
Yeah.
And maybe it could be said, a firm's identity and individual's background from a strengths-based perspective, including blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, we do have strengths-based down below in that, well, we moved it down to implementation, but if it
I
feels
don't mind having it here just
having
because,
it there too.
Yeah.
just as I talk to educators,
Mhm.
shifting to strengths-based at a deficit-based is going to be a culture shift.
Yes.
And I think strengths-based naturally honors, you know, various backgrounds and abilities. That's really the point of it, is like, I think it can, I mean, it just can be used in so many different ways. And it just really honors where the person is coming from, you know, in many ways.
Too many tabs open now.
Okay, so one other comment that Daniel made was he put about the developmental progression. Does that
Yeah, I
feel
think
like
that's
something that goes
standards.
here? What's that?
I think that's standards.
Yeah, okay. It is for sure
I
in
liked
standards.
it, but I think it is important, but I think I agree with that too.
Okay, so we got that covered.
Yeah.
Let's just put address progression in standards. Okay, got it. All right. So moving down, Annie says, okay, I'm just gonna look at time, just a quick time, 4:37.
Yeah, and I can't stay late.
Okay.
A few minutes early.
Let's try it.
So I'm reading Annie's comment, and I actually think maybe it's a second bullet point that says, so we have identify system shifts, then also, let me do that. Let me document. I love it. Very organized. I just keep typing the wrong one. So the identifies shifts. Nice. I mean, that's like about personal reflection, right? So I think her comment is, yes, if we only say, oh yeah, this is a systems problem, we don't do the internal reflective work. So transformation also refers to like the internal reflection that needs to happen within the people, done by the people in the system. I'm not quite sure how to say that. So I agree with her. So a reflection, so this a bullet point. That
so maybe that it addresses the individual and our classroom community. In addition to the system?
No, I don't like that. Sorry.
Not that it addresses, more reflective, not addresses.
Yeah.
Or tends to reflect.
Like if we said something like reflective practitioners.
Okay.
And maybe Vanessa comes up with something way better than that. But what does it mean to be reflective? As a reflection is a part of individual reflection, is a part of transformation. Just gonna add that.
Examining the individual's role within the system. I'm just thinking out loud. You don't have to type that. Yeah. Examining the individual's role within the system.
But I agree with her.
Yep. Great.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that is a big shift. I mean, that causes a big shift when that starts happening. So
yeah, I mean, all of the Oregon Education Association Trauma Informed Educator Series is like all about personal reflection.
Oof, yeah.
Yeah. Which is hard.
Very, very hard. Especially if you're not ready for it or you don't see the need for it, you know.
Yeah, it makes you a much better advocate for system change.
Yep, it does. True.
And an ally for that, but yeah, it's hard. Okay.
Okay, the other comment for classroom or identify system shifts at the classroom level, school and district level. She wanted added in teacher staff member level.
Where are you seeing that?
In her comments off to the side.
Your partnership.
Yeah, except the individuals aren't systems. So classroom is classroom community. So identify system shifts at the classroom, school, or district level. I think what she's calling out is this individual reflection piece. So I feel like that
It's captured.
covered. Yeah.
Staff member level.
To say classroom community and then classroom is redundant. And an individual, I don't know, does an individual make a system?
Would it be okay to add, I mean, under the reflective practitioners and practices, would it be okay to add reflective, I mean, something about like reflective practitioners and, I don't know, educators or something, I don't know, something like that, like just to be even a little bit more specific, and then it really does cover everything? Or do you feel like that's too much? I don't know.
We could change it from practitioners to educators, reflective educators. I'm fine with that.
I don't know that I disagree with practitioners being there, because as we've talked about, you know, it's not necessarily just going to be, I mean, there's so many people who could, you know, be participating in this, but, you know, particularly could primarily be educators if we're really like, you know, looking at it honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I think of the word practitioners as inclusive of educators.
I agree. I agree. I just don't know that the educators themselves, you know, would see themselves that way. That's, I think.
I mean, so that's why I think, you know, if those phrases are interchangeable,
yeah,
reflective educators.
If it was defined somewhere, not that we would be defining it here necessarily, but you know, some way to define it at some point, that would probably be helpful as we're asking for those changes. That would be another shift in thinking for sure.
Great. Okay. Andrea, it looks like the next one up is your comment, and it's in the co-learning section, and it says need to add co-sharing power across the school, adults with adults, students with students, adults with students, etc.
Did we want to go through partnership and look at the questions? Do you want to go down to co-learning, or are we just going through the comments right now?
Are you talking about all the way down further? Tension point?
No, we just did transformative. Did we want the next principle down is partnership?
There was nothing in partnership to
There was the questions on the side. Just the questions.
Oh, right. Yep. Sorry. Yep. Sorry, I was just looking at the comments. I forgot about like the question. Oh, sorry. Thanks. Thank you. Yep. Let's do it. We need to, look at those too.
Okay.
So I think we got the systems change. I think that's addressed.
Yeah.
Indicators or standards for students.
So I think that next question is addressed in the standards group.
Yeah. Let me just make a couple quick notes. What does an equitable learning environment look like in practice? Who defines equity in these spaces? What does a healthy system look like?
Feel like those are rhetorical questions?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're good questions, but does that something that's the guidance document? Is that addressed in the framework? Did the whereas statements cover that?
I wonder if they're,
because we're also trying to stay out of like manifesto territory. Cultivates a healthy, equitable system.
cultivates a healthy, equitable.
There is something here. I'm just going to copy and paste it again as well from the House bill, and I'm just going to stick it there, and you guys can look at this particular wording. Where's it at? Hang on.
Oh, put it in the wrong spot.
Got you. I got you, Beth.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, let me just Is this in the partnership section or transformative still?
Transformative.
So,
I'm just gonna like stick it here and hopefully it's not gonna be too.
Okay, can we put it in the other document?
Oh, yep, I forgot.
That's
Thank
okay. I know, no, I'm just like trying to go back and forth between the two
Yeah.
too.
Knew that in my mind logically, but okay, hold on. Then it happened. Okay, hang on, let me find the space here. This is from, I don't know if this is, oh, I lost some of it. Sorry. Hang on.
so is this from SEL, that transformation is?
No, this is directly from the whereas statements in the bill.
Oh,
And again, it may not be quite what we're talking about here. I just was thinking about, I think the question of, what does a healthy system look like? Not so much who defines equity, but like, what does a healthy system look like?
yeah, and I think my point is I appreciate the question, and I'm not sure that this is the space.
Yeah, and it may not be. This is a statement from the whereas question or whereas
Yeah,
statements, and I may not be right here, but can you
Yeah.
guys
I like it out of the whereas statements. I don't feel like it fits in the transformative principle.
Could that be an implementation thing?
I think it's the outcome of implementation. Quality implementation leads to. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. That feels, no, I don't.
Is there something to be said about, the healthy system in terms of school culture, climate safety? I think that's more what I'm wondering. I don't know if it does belong here, but I'm wondering if there is needing to be said something about, school culture, climate safety, etc.
It could be like this. Something like.
The wording can be changed. A healthy system. Yep. Integral part of blah, blah, blah.
That would actually include.
And then we are addressing healthy systems, safe and school culture, climate safety. Yeah, I think I like that.
So it's just sort of naming.
Yeah,
what a healthy system is.
it is, and it's again using some of the language that's not too jargony.
And it sort of gives like a statement of what we think the principle means.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe that's something I think we only had that one bullet point in partnerships. This is kind of just skipping ahead because I know our time is running short, so we don't get to it all today.
Yeah.
But
those all define a healthy system.
Yeah.
Good part of school culture, climate, and safety. That's what all of those bullet points, this is what it is.
Yep, perfect. That's great.
So in partnership, like having what's a similar sort of statement look like? What, true partnership.
Talking about shared power and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think shared power needs to be like its own.
And I feel like that might definitely, I feel like that could belong in framework. Yeah, that feels very framework oriented.
Yeah.
Let me see, partnership, what's that really mean? Decision making power, collaboration, one-way or two-way information sharing, collaborative problem solving. How is partnership embodied? And I don't think again, down further, if you go down a little further on the other document under co-learning, there's some questions about, or some statements about there are some big developmental issues. I don't think we need to get into that part. I think we can say that without getting into all the developmental issues that come along with the co-learning piece.
Yeah, I think that's addressed in the standards
here. Yeah. Independence. Yeah.
This is where, do we want to name about centering voice? in this
There was
section.
something else that Annie had brought up. I'm trying to remember her statement on it now. It was a while ago. Something that Annie brought up. Gotta think of how she stated it. I'll think about that for a minute. And it was,
Well, what do you guys think about that opening sentence I just wrote in the partnership row?
Yeah, that looks like it hits on some of those comments.
Mm-hmm.
Partnership, responsibility, ownership. It also talks about centering voice. Do you think that could be a bullet?
Whose voice is it center? Whose voice are we centering?
That's the question. Yeah, whose voice is centered?
Because yes, but I think it depends on what you're working on at any given time. You want to center the voice of the person, of the group at the center of the issue.
Impacted.
And that centering could shift based on what it is we're trying to address.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, is it the centering of the voice of all partners? Is that what it's, or is that what we're really saying?
No, because that's like a cacophony.
You're right that it can shift, but is it maybe just even a broader statement of the centering of the voice of all, all partners, including, not that we have to say all this, but including students, families, community members. I wonder if it's just something like that.
And it's like the concept of like step up, step back. I was like, to me, it's like center. It's almost like it's like an ebb and a flow. It's like a giving up, it's like a lifting up and stepping back, like recognizing.
And it goes back and forth. Yes.
Recognizing which partners need to be lifted up at different times.
I really, with what you're saying, Andrew, I almost think that what we're saying, I don't know, you can tell me, you guys can disagree if you want, but maybe it's not its own separate bullet point. Maybe it goes along with the co-sharing of power. It's like co-sharing of power and blah, 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 centering the voice of all partners or of all whatever. Like, I think they maybe go hand in hand, or should.
It means the principles of human-centered design when you really get down to it, but then we might have to explain human-centered design.
Yeah. Cool.
Something like that.
To meet the needs of the community as a whole versus the needs of the individual. Yeah, and I think that also is something along the lines of what Annie, the comment that Annie was made a long time ago. It just kind of has always stuck with me. And I can't remember exactly how she said it, but it was something, it was like, this was kind of the gist of it, something along these lines. And it had to do with, honoring cultures and groups that were, it was more than just the word interdependence. It had to do with, oh my gosh, I can't think of quite the right word, but anyway, I think that basically sums that up.
Okay, and I have to sign off because I have to be somewhere at 5 or 5:30. It's going to take me 35 minutes to get there. So,
okay.
Thank you. What I meant by really quick, need to add co-sharing power across the school. I think you can just say co-constructed student. I was just typing something that someone had told me to type, but I think it's covered. Co-learning, or even just co-constructed and co-sharing of power among students and adults. Something as simple as that could be a bullet point. So,
in framework.
In the framework, in the co-learning row. Yeah, that's what I meant.
Okay.
Bye. Thanks. We'll see you next time.
Bye. Thank you. Becca, did she say right at the co-constructed one? Co-constructed and co-sharing?
Yeah, I think she's talking about in the co-learning, co-constructed student voice. Let me think here. Co-learning modeled. I'm just looking. Constructed. I think that is what she was saying. Yeah. And then she was talking about the co-learning, but I think she was talking about co-constructed. Need to add co-sharing power across the school, adults with adults, students with students, adults with students. Co-sharing, co-construction. Yeah, I think that's where she was referring to. I'm pretty sure.
Because we got the co-sharing of power up here.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, even though her words say co-sharing of power.
Mhm.
Community co-constructed, co-learning, modeled. Yeah, I don't know if we need to actually say any more about it. I think maybe we have
Okay.
said what we need to say, and maybe there's a little bit more there, but I don't know that there is.
I'm just looking up above to make sure we got everything under partnership,
Yeah.
decision making, collaboration. That's all that was been added in.
Mhm.
I feel like those pieces are done. Co-construction rather than co-constructed. Co-construction.
Oh, I like co-construction better than co-learning because it requires us.
Co-creation of learning environments.
Mhm.
So right here, co-construction.
Yeah, I think so. I wonder if we need to be a little bit more, well, and I wonder if we actually combine the co-construction and the, like where she says, okay, they say better than learning environments. I think we maybe combine those is sort of what I'm feeling.
What do you think about right here, what I got? Co-construction and co-creation of learning environments. Does that get it?
Yeah, I think so. Because
do we want to keep student voice there or take it off? I think did we name student name voice above?
Co-sharing of power and voice to meet the needs of the community as a whole versus the needs of an individual student voice. I think that maybe is appropriate to leave that and then get rid of the co-learning modeled, perhaps.
Get rid of which one? Co-learning modeled.
The co-learning modeled, because I think by saying co-creation of learning environments, I mean, that's a tricky one. I think what they're saying is, I don't think I fully understand their statement there. How will this?
Yeah, earlier this one, the co-learn, so it was around modeled, like how do we have the adults model behaviors that we want students to do? How do students model? It was around like this kind of like learning from each other. And
yeah, and that's true. And it has to be, I think it does have to be modeled by the adult, like, and also where, it's the modeling creates a level of safety. Like this is what we're going to do. This is how we are going to interact with each other. Not in a demanding way, but just in like, here, let me model this for you, and then it creates a safety and a permission for everybody to do it together. Like, oh, okay, this is what we're going to do. So maybe that does stay, because I guess that's slightly different than the co-creation of learning environments. The modeling piece is the important part, I think. Yeah.
Should we put modeled in the beginning? Modeled through co-learning?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, shift it. Mm-hmm. Yes, I like that better. Yeah.
And that way it's at the front. Okay.
I think that, yeah, because I think that's the important piece. So student adult agency.
Director collaborative. Occur very differently. So around.
And then we're going to stay away from the developmental pieces, I think, right now.
Yeah.
Or that needs to be more in the standards, I think.
I'll just make a note off to the side. And then do you want to call it good for today?
Yeah, I think that sounds good, because I feel like we got relatively to the end, and the rest there, I'm sure there's a little bit more adjusting, but I think that is a good place to kind of start and end. So
got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much for jumping in today.
Thanks. We can talk, the three of us talk for a few minutes anyway. So
yeah, that was great.
Have a good rest of your week.